That is the Sony booth in Photokina, and here is our interview with the company. Photokina 2018 coverage is brought to you by Manfrotto. Imagine more. We are here at Photokina 2018 with Yann Salmon from Sony. Hello, Yann.
Hello, Ido.
And this is the third time that we're actually meeting here in Photokina, and we have a lot of questions, so let's start. With the release of the new Nikon and Canon now upcoming Panasonic full-frame mirrorless cameras, Sony is no more the only game in town when it comes to full-frame mirrorless cameras. Yesterday you have a very interesting announcement. Can you tell us a bit about the announcement that you've made yesterday about your future plans?
Yeah, sure. We have announced that we will be developing 12 additional lenses for our lineup that is currently at 48 and reaching the number of 60 lenses in the lineup. We have already reached 30 lenses, native full-frame lenses for our system. That is the biggest lens lineup today. So I'm kind of pleased that others are coming because it means basically that Sony was right 5 years ago. We were challenged. We have progressed so quickly. We are now leader in the full-frame market, 50% market share in Europe, and worldwide number one. So we were right. The other want to join the game. They are welcome because we need innovation in this market, because this market needs, some fresh air.
Okay, and you also mentioned something about introducing artificial intelligence into your cameras in the future?
Yes, so we have been doing the core approach of Sony since we launched the first Alpha 7 has been innovation, and we're always making leaps in terms of innovation, and that's the reason why we managed to become number one. So the biggest innovation, and that was not so much discussed at the beginning, is autofocus. But now autofocus become a standard, and everybody is talking about autofocus. Is it as good as Sony, etc.? And autofocus from Sony is already using artificial intelligence, of course, and we announced that we have the ability to do, or are studying the ability to do it for wildlife photography, so the purpose is always to bring a function that serves the photographer and not replace the photographer. And why is Sony number one in full frame today? It's because one of the reasons is this autofocus. Wedding photographer and portrait is loving this function, and people are switching brand today because of that function. And for wildlife photography, it's also a very interesting approach. So we need to find the right balance between what the camera do for the photographer or support the photographer, but the photographer needs to keep his creativity and his artistic approach.
So you didn't mention when this is going to happen, but sometime in the future?
Yes, sometime in the future. It's part of our plan, yes.
The new Sony 24mm f1.4 GM, which is the new lens that you introduced just before Photokina, differs, I think, from the other GM lenses in that it is being, I think, especially compact and lightweight. Did you do anything different in terms of technologies or optical design that will allow you to basically have this lens so small?
Yeah, it's. I don't know, you probably know, we have developed a specific element called the XA element that has extremely high precision, that is 0.01 micro on the surface. This element, the ability of this element is to create extremely sharp pictures, has extremely high resolution, and we have integrated two of these elements within this lens, hence the capability to this lens to be so compact. And you saw it also on the 400mm as well. It's small, and we managed also to keep a very different balance, to take out the balance from the front to the middle or to the end to create this balance. And that's the specificity of G-Master lenses today.
Okay. Let's move to a different topic. 10-bit 422 internal inside the camera. This is something that a lot of users are actually asking. I know that no camera currently, consumer camera currently on the market does that. Why is that? Can you say something about this?
Yeah, of course. So there are, as you mentioned, solutions through HDMI cable to an external recorder. Of course, the difficulty is the amount of data. So when you start to go to 422 color coding, you need more powerful processor. It's not a matter of not having the processor, but more powerful processor means more battery consumption and means also heating. So you need to find the right balance on a product that delivers what consumer wants. if you start to bring out functions that are unusable, then you will get more critics than positive. So as of now, the best balance we have in our product is to keep the 420 and 8-bit recording to ensure that the quality of the user experience stay at the top quality. But of course, we are looking into that, but we need to think about this balance all the time.
Okay. The new Canon EOS R has a new mechanism that allows to close down the shutter when you switch lenses. Is this something that you maybe looked at or think that can contribute to your own cameras?
We don't really have any major issue of this, to be honest. We don't have complaint on our system. We have the stabilization system inside our sensor that some competitors do not have. And this sensor has the ability to shake and also to remove the particles that are the most lightweight, but also the access to the sensor is, as any camera, if dust comes in the chamber, and if you have a mirror moving or a shutter moving, at some stage the dust will move anyway inside. So we will see. It might be a good idea or not, but as of now, we don't have the expression from consumer to change anything on our system.
Okay, fair enough. Here is an interesting suggestion. One of the things that at least we find a bit missing from your cameras, and that's true for a lot of companies actually, is the ability to control a camera from a distance to actually fully control all its functionality. Now, what we suggested, or we are actually suggesting right now, is to create a camera which is, let's call it a dummy camera without a sensor and a mount, which will have all the functionality in terms of the screen and other functionalities of a regular camera, but it will be able to wirelessly control, let's say, a distant camera. So you can put a camera on a pole or somewhere up in the air and control it from a second camera, just like you were holding it in your hand. Is it something that you might consider maybe in the future?
We do have remote software control through Imaging Edge, so you can control by distance a camera connected through a computer. So your idea is interesting, probably very good, but it's also always a balance in between opportunity, market potential, and development time and cost. So
it also will probably be pretty expensive because it's a full body.
So it would mean quite heavy development, but the resources of engineering are limited. So we put priorities, many asking when coming more lenses, when coming new bodies, 7S Mark III and so on. So there are priority to set. And so depending on the size and the opportunity of the market, this kind of development may or may not happen.
Okay. It seems that Sony actually abandoned the apps that you had on previous cameras with their newer releases, the A7 III and I think the A7R3. And a lot of people actually like them, especially for things like the intervalometer, for example. Is it something that you might be able to complement with something else, or what are you thinking about this?
So we're always listening to the voice of customers, and it's true there has been some requests on several products, especially for example RX0 was requested a lot. So we're listening to that. We are taking care to think how we can integrate those requests. We still have the Play Memory camera apps on the phone that give the basic functionalities, like the control of the camera from distance, like the wireless remote as well. So we will think about how we can think about these camera apps. The apps are still available on the website for the products that are still compatible, but we will think how to integrate these kind of functions.
Okay, fair enough. Many new mirrorless cameras integrate the top screen for information. I think that the Nikon, the Canon, the new Nikon Z, the Canon EOS R, and also the new Panasonic. Is this something that you might consider integrating into your future cameras? I know it's a bit complicated because your existing design of the camera doesn't have room, at least not all of them, has room for a top screen on the camera.
You know, photography is about passion. There are people passionate by their own products, but it's again a matter of balance. So our choice today is to create products in full frame that are probably the most compact in the market. We want to stick to a certain direction in terms of design and development. That is I would say, the signature of Sony. So yes, a screen on the top is nice to have. Some people really would like to have it, but remember, we have half of the market today in mirrorless. and full frame. And in full frame total market, we have 50% of the market. And we haven't seen an expression of a strong expression of customer to have this. Of course, we always have some customer that need it for specific application, but you can turn the screen up for any active, photographic to see your screen. So we will carefully listen to the voice of customer, and if needed, we will of course integrate the function that are requested by customers.
Okay. This is a more general question. Despite some improvements or some recent improvements in your models, in the Sony models, you're still sometimes being criticized for the complexity of the menu system that you have. Maybe it's time for doing something which is a bit more radical, like completely moving from a menu system which is text-based to something which is more image-like with a touchscreen. You have now a touchscreen on a lot of your cameras. So maybe it's time to do a complete redesign of the menu system. It's quite, I think you had this menu system since 2008 or something like that.
So it's, as you say, it's not entirely true. The menu system has evolved a lot compared to before. And I think the new approach we have done by, as you mentioned, piling the functionality together has been a big change in terms of usability. And again, I will come back a little bit to the passionate aspect of photography and where people are really passionate about their own camera. And the Sony approach is to give a lot of flexibility for the users. So we have a lot of function, it's true. Some people hate it, but some photographers need it, and especially, for example, sport photographer. There are many functions that comes from the user that were using different brands and switching to Sony, and they need to have the ability to replicate certain functionality. And this ability to customize your product creates a lot of choice. So as of today, the best way we have is this menu system. If we can improve it to touch operation and more graphic, we will certainly do it, and that's why we have the FN function to access directly. You can change this parameter by yourself, and you also have my menu where you can put your own menu. And of course, it needs a little bit of personalization, but you have the ability to make it easier.
Oh, that's true. Okay, let's move to a few questions from our readers. They send us a few questions. The first one is asking about the LAEA4 adapter, which basically adapts your A-mount lenses into your newer... Yeah, exactly. So the question was basically, this adapter has an older autofocus system. I think it comes from the A65, so a really old one. But some lenses without internal autofocus motors, such as the Sony, let's say, 135 f1.8 Sono lens, it is mandatory to use this adapter and not the newer, I think, LAEA3. Or I'm not sure if it's newer, but the other adapter. So at the moment, this combination actually a bit cripples the camera. Is it possible to create a newer version of the LAEA4 with a newer autofocus system?
Fundamentally, would be possible to do it, but the amount of development needed to do that would be quite high, quite heavy, and also the mechanical aspect of the mechanical lenses might also not be fast enough to match. And I'm probably thinking your customer thinking about the Alpha 9 AF system that is integrated in the Alpha 99 AF system. That would be nice to have in an LA, but I'm not sure that the power needed and so on would be possible. And it would need quite a lot of development. So technically possible, but probably industrially difficult to realize.
Okay, fair enough. Another request actually from a reader, can Sony add an option to change the color of the autofocus point from gray to something different so that you will be able to differentiate the autofocus point from a background, let's say if it's white or gray or something like that?
So the color has been chosen, of course, on many tests, and the choice of the color has been made on a particular data information from Sony has carried those tests. Now, the fact to change, we have heard about this request, so we are listening to that. We need to think and to judge if there is a possibility or not to change it. I'm not an engineer, so I wouldn't be able to express the voice of Sony engineer team. Is it possible technically in the current system, or do we need to change completely this system? I won't be able to answer this question.
But at least you're aware of it.
We are aware of that some customer need it. Now we need to analyze if it's really necessary or not.
That's very good. Okay, can Sony include an option to easily add markers to video recording? So for example, if you're shooting a video like we're doing right now and you want to add a marker to basically mark this point in the video and then watch this mark in the, let's say, Premiere or other editing software, is this something that you can add to a firmware or in the future product?
I think it's a very good idea. So yeah, let me take that back to Tokyo management, and I will hopefully manage to convince them. But I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Can you make the information on the EVF and the monitor, the viewfinder monitor, change or basically rotate when you shoot pictures in portrait mode?
Again, it's more an engineering question, so it's difficult for me. I think it implies quite a lot of modification because the complexity of the display, of the autofocus display and so on, would probably mean quite a lot of work, but not only work, but also maybe memory inside. So how to build that in might not be that easy, but yeah, I wouldn't be able to judge that as I'm not myself a software engineer.
Okay, final question. We already talked about the menu system, but this is a request which is a little bit different. Can you make basically the settings different on video and stills? So for example, if you're shooting in 50th of a second in video mode and you want to shoot in 1 to 200 of a second in stills mode, you won't, when you change from one mode to another, it won't change with it.
Yeah, again, I would come back, it's a design choice. Some customer would prefer this specific setting in movie that is changing between movie or stills. It's a choice we have made, but on the other hand, we also have a system of memories that the customer can put their own parameters, and that's why we have decided that we prefer, or we think that the continuity seems more logical. Now, again, it's a matter of personal, preference. So, as of now, our position has been to keep the same settings between the different modes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, Yann.
Thanks so much, Ido.